Let me get rid of this banner. Okay. So did you unmute on StreamYard?
I thought you said mute again. Want me to unmute now?
Yeah, unmute on. You can mute while we were just waiting, but yeah.
Okay, I unmuted.
Okay. Let me turn this down because I can hear you through there. Okay. Okay. Or I can turn this down because I can hear you through there. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. I still got a little, but whatever. I'm good.
Yeah.
As long as everybody can hear. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. All right. All right. Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. How was your week?
Busy.
Busy.
How about yours?
The same. It ain't one thing, it's another. That's all I got. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Yep. Okay. Let me get that out of my spirit. Well, welcome everybody to our Saturday morning tea, where we discuss health information, news, education, certification tips, entrepreneurship, the revenue cycle, rogue, these physicians. I'll come back to that. Physicians, providers, and all of the things. The revenue cycle just at large. As you come in, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up or like button. I am Clarice Warner. I am the girl with the pearls, the founder and senior education director of the Professional Reimbursement Network, LLC, where coding education is key. Let that sit in your spirit for a minute. Okay. PRN is a healthcare compliance consultancy located in Cincinnati, Ohio, that specializes in revenue cycle and regulatory compliance in education. Now, let me ask you, do you know what it takes to be a certified marketable medical coder? Well, before I introduce my co-host, let me share with you information on a free email course on the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder.
Are you interested in medical coding, but not sure where to start and scared of wasting time and resources? Let me help you with the right steps to become a certified marketable medical coder. Learn more at bit.ly/5stepscoder.
All right. If you are in Clubhouse, feel free to click the link at the top of the house. If you are interested in getting more information about the 5 steps to become a certified marketable medical coder. And if you are joining us via YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, check out the video description for the link. So joining me today is my illustrious co-host, Mr. Jesse, the registered trademark. Put some respect on his name, the coding nurse. Sir, introduce yourself and tell the folks all about you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse. I live in Philadelphia. I have been in healthcare for 30 years. I transitioned to HIM in 2014 during the pandemic, 2020. I created a company called the Coding Nurse LLC, where I help nurses and other healthcare people with clinical backgrounds transition into the wonderful world of HIM.
All right. And how's all that going?
It's coming along nicely.
All right. Coming along nicely. Love it. All right. Let's see. Before we jump in on our topic today, the continuation, let me remind you that if you are on Clubhouse and want to join in and add to the conversation, just raise your hand. We will definitely bring you in. Now, we want to invite everybody to join in and add to the conversation. Don't be shy. This is a conversation. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to know your opinions. Your opinion matters here and is always welcomed here, either with us or against us. It's still welcome. We love to hear what you got to say. We may learn something from you. For my YouTube Facebook, and LinkedIn friends, you all know what to do. Please use the chat to have that conversation. And if you have a question, please type a Q first so that we know it is a question and we don't miss it. So for those who are just joining us or watching the replay today, we are spilling more tea on compliance and specifically compliance program effectiveness. But first, let's get into our church announcements. Lord, they are a doozy. Church without MLK. Can't get in there.
That's
Can't get
right.
into heaven without having an MLK fan. At least that's what they lead you to believe. Church announcements. Okay. Since we got a lot going on, I'll let our church announcements short. I do want to hear just a little more of that word. Come on. All right. So today's church announcement starts with what's happening on Tuesday. If you have some time, I believe it starts at 10 a.m. There's a podcast called Talk 10 Tuesdays. I'm not sure if you all are aware, but they are going to talk a little bit about it's from 10 to 10:30 Eastern time, 9 to 9:30 Central, and 7 to 7:30 Pacific. They're going to talk about AI and coding, and it says beware of the intersection. And I thought, this might be something y'all want to take a listen to if you get an opportunity. Their information says, despite their advanced capabilities, AI tools can occasionally misinterpret ambiguous documentation or lack the nuance necessary for complex decision-making. And that is why coders must continue to exercise their expertise and judgment when reviewing AI-assisted code assignment. This level of diligence is crucial for ensuring that AI-assisted coding assignment meets stringent standards of quality and compliance, as you'll learn during the next live session of Talk 10 Tuesday. That's when Angela Comfort will return to their broadcast as a special guest to report the lead story on how coders need to be prepared to leverage AI technologies while safeguarding the quality and compliance of coding assignments. So we've been talking a little bit about AI and coding. That was a little church announcement. If you get an opportunity, check out Talk 10 Tuesday. You can listen to it live, but you can always go back to it. I think they're on everything. They're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. They're on all the stuff. So you can check them out and see what they got to talk about. And maybe we'll have something to discuss next week related to that. My next church announcement was related to, somewhat related to what we're going to talk about today. So the key elements. So we're going to dive into what the key elements of an effective compliance program is, according to the Healthcare Compliance Association. However, I dug up an old school article on the key elements of an effective HIM coding compliance program. And John Gouliart Jr. Wrote an article about what he felt were the 8 elements of an effective compliance program that's tailored to HIM and coding. And most of them align, but these are some of the things that we've been talking about for several weeks now. One is connection to a compliance officer and reporting through a compliance committee, which I've mentioned several times about having some sort of compliance committee. Says, does your department routinely meet with compliance to discuss issues, share findings, and collaborate on corrective action plans? The 3 most important functions of any compliant effort are to prevent, detect, and remediate any issues. And everyone needs to be present in order for that to happen. He mentions the Pepper report, which I've talked about before, and any other available data on the facilities or organization's compliance committee that you see regularly. Yeah, just making sure that you discuss these at the department committee meeting first, along with coding accuracy and medical record integrity. So getting all of these people together, as well as sharing it with the compliance through a compliance committee. Making sure you have written standards. We all know the whole saying, if it isn't written, it didn't happen. Well, make sure the standards are written and they are critical for communicating your compliance program. Having them written, are they posted, communicated, readable, and reviewed? Those should also be factors in that. Communication channels, making sure that it's bi-directional. Says don't confuse communicating with providing education and training. That's not the same thing. Communication is a two-way street. So make sure you consider your audience. It says, but how do we know that compliance-related communication really matters? Well, he said, we actually do. A George Washington University, my now alma mater, evidence on the use and efficacy of internal whistleblower systems. They have a whole study that came out that talks about the strong correlation between reporting volumes and positive business outcomes. They also found that contacts for all reporting channels, hotlines, calls, emails, requests for guidance, and all of those things. Making sure that you kind of monitor that and take a look at that. And do you know what your communication rate is per 100 employees? Typically, I think they said 1.4 reports per 100 employees. Education and training. Again, if written standards do not guarantee compliance and an email is not sufficient to provide education to your employees, well, what do? You have to figure out what's the most effective training methods. And one of them is to offer scenario-based training. People actually often remember when you tell them a story or tell them something that happens. Scenario-based training does two things. It thwarts comments like that training has nothing to do with my job. And more importantly, it shows your audience that you care about understanding the challenges they face and can actually discuss compliance effectiveness in a meaningful way. Of course, auditing and monitoring. This is where the rubber hits the road with the results of auditing and the behaviors that are detected with monitoring. Of course, there needs to be a work plan around that. It should be based on risk. Is it dynamic or static? Is it ever growing, or is it just that one-time thing? Is the passing threshold 95 to 100% or something else? I know folks get in their feelings when they see those numbers. Are there criteria for pass and move on versus fail and repeat? And is the work plan inclusive of follow-up audits? Again, there's nothing more important than having a plan. A plan keeps you focused on what it is that you need to do. We also have response. Is your compliance program one of continuous improvement or focused on financial metrics? Does your compliance program respond in line with a just culture? A just culture is a concept related to systems thinking, which emphasizes that mistakes are generally a product of faulty organizational cultures rather than solely brought about by the person or persons directly involved. In a just culture, after an incident, the question is asked, what went wrong? And everybody is treated uniformly and fairly. Reputation is another thing to consider along with your just culture. And are you the type of organization that considers and contemplates the following? Do you voluntarily refund when you find an error resulting in an overpayment? What is your responsibility to look back? Do you preserve all documentation? And do you cooperate when investigated? Oh my God, this needs to be in a big banner. Okay, number 7 is enforcement. Are there incentives and disciplinary measures to ensure that compliance is being implemented and maintained effectively? And what do your performance reviews look like? Are your staff meeting agendas or communications? What do your staff meeting agendas or communications look like? Do they speak to compliance and encourage staff to reach out for guidance and clarification? Tone from the top is one of the most important factors, whether from the office of the CEO or the office of the HIM coding director. What does your bonus incentive evaluation program look like? Are people being rewarded for compliance participation or disregarded? And lastly, risk assessment. This element is not a formal element in the original HHS OIG documents, but it is mentioned enough times to later warrant its placeholder. A compliance risk assessment should be performed annually. All of your plans should spin from this assessment based on risk. So again, this was something that he put together, in his opinion, that would work for the compliance plan that's directed to a coding HIM compliance program. Mr. Jesse, did you have anything to speak to this one?
This is like,
Get my tea, Lord.
I mean, as I'm listening to what you're reading, I'm like, this sounds like Oz.
Oh my God.
Because it would be great if programs did just that.
Oh, good morning,
Maybe one
everybody.
day.
Yeah, not Oz though, sir. Well, they should be. They should be. So let's get into our topic for today. Get rid of church announcements. So again, we're continuing on with our conversation about compliance programs, and let me just add this. So these are the 8 elements of a compliance program. So the first one is there needs to be a and this isn't just for hospitals. Let me say that this compliance program, there should be a compliance program in all healthcare organizations, even if it's a one-man shop. There should still be some sort of compliance program here, because you're going to run into some of the same things. Well, you do run into the same things that larger organizations run into. So there should be a designation of a compliance officer and compliance committee, development of compliance policies and procedures, including standards of conduct, developing open lines of communication, appropriate training and education, internal monitoring and auditing, responding to detected deficiencies, enforcement of disciplinary standards, define roles and responsibilities, assign oversight for compliance, and conduct an assessment for the program's effectiveness. So those are it started out with 7, but those are the 8 elements of a effective, she said Oz, effective compliance program. Now, we want to talk about what the government says regarding compliance effectiveness. Do I want to share this? Yeah, I guess we could do that. Let's pull that up. Because this was the document that we ran out of time looking at last week. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this was updated. This is from the U.S. Department of Justice Criminal Division, Evaluation of Corporate Compliance Programs, and it was updated in March 2023. Pretty much it says that prosecutors should assess and examine whether the compliance program is being disseminated to and understood by employees in practice in order to decide whether the compliance program is, quote, truly effective, end quote. There are 3, let me go. I went too far. There are 3 questions that should be asked. Let's look at the introduction. So the principles of federal prosecution of business organizations in the Justice Manual describe specific factors that prosecutors should consider in conducting an investigation of a corporation, determining whether to bring charges, and negotiating plea or other agreements. Now, I know having a compliance plan is a mitigating factor when it comes to leveling any types of fines and or penalties, but they have now taken it a bit further. So you can't just say, oh, we got a compliance plan. It must be an effective compliance plan. And this document kind of puts the ownership or the checklist together to say, hey, this is what, in our opinion, an effective compliance plan looks like. So there are three things that determine, or three questions. There are three fundamental questions that a prosecutor should ask. They should ask, is the corporation's compliance program well designed? Is the program being applied earnestly and in good faith? In other words, is the program adequately resourced and empowered to function effectively? And lastly, does the corporation's compliance program work in practice? Mr. Jesse, did you want to, because I can't see you. You gotta, if you gotta jump in.
No, not yet. Go ahead.
Okay. So let's see. So some of the questions in assessing. So we talked about what the 8 elements of an effective compliance program is. So they kind of went through and tried to break down what they look for or what they feel are part of answering those questions related to the compliance program. So first, is the corporation's compliance program well designed? So the critical factors in evaluating any program are whether the program is adequately designed for maximum effectiveness in preventing and detecting wrongdoing by employees, and whether corporate management is enforcing the program or is tactically encouraging or permitting employees to engage in misconduct. So prosecutors should examine the comprehensiveness of the compliance program, ensuring that there is not only a clear message that misconduct is not tolerated, but also policies and procedures, from appropriate assignments of responsibility to training programs to systems of incentives and discipline that ensure that compliance program is well integrated into the company's operations and workforce. They will be looking for risk assessment. This is the starting point for a prosecutor's evaluation of whether a company has a well-designed compliance program. Is to understand the company's business from a commercial perspective, how the company has identified, assessed, and defined its risk profile, and the degree to which the program devotes appropriate scrutiny and resources to the spectrum of risks. In short, prosecutors should endeavor to understand why the company has chosen to set up the compliance program the way it has, and why and how the company's compliance program has evolved over time. Is the program appropriately designed to detect and prevent the particular types of misconduct most likely to occur in a particular corporation's line of business and complex regulatory environment? For example, prosecutors should consider whether the company has analyzed and addressed the varying risks presented by, among other factors, the location of its operations, the industry sector, the competitiveness of the market, the regulatory landscape, potential clients and business partners, transactions with foreign governments, payments to foreign officials, use of third parties, gifts, travel and entertainment expenses, and charitable and political donations. And remember, this document is for a corporate compliance program, not necessarily just for healthcare, but across the board. But all organizations should have a compliance program. Let's see. They also talk about the risk management process. And so here are some questions. What methodology has the company used to identify, analyze, and address the particular risk it faces? What information or metrics has the company collected and used to help detect the type of misconduct in question? How have the information or metrics informed the company's compliance program? Risk-tailored resource allocation. Does the company devote a disproportionate amount of time to policing low risk areas instead of high risk areas, such as questionable payments to third-party consultants, suspicious trading activity, or excessive discounts to resellers and distributors? Does the company give greater scrutiny as warranted to high risk transactions? For example, a large dollar contract with a government agency in a high risk country than more modest and routine hospitality and entertainment? Updates and revision. Is the risk assessment current and subject to periodic review? Is the periodic review limited to a snapshot in time or based upon continuous access to operational data and information across functions? Has the periodic review led to updates in policies, procedures, and controls? And do these updates account for risks discovered through misconduct or other problems with the compliance program? And then from lessons learned, does the company have a process for tracking and incorporating into its periodic risk assessment lessons learned, either from the company's own prior issues or from those of other companies operating in the same industry and or geographic region? Next is your policies and procedures. Again, they've talked a lot about making sure that there are policy procedures. They're looking at the design of the policy and procedure and the process for implementing any new policies and procedures and updating any existing policies and procedures. Comprehensiveness. What efforts has the company made to monitor and implement policies and procedures that reflect and deal with the spectrum of risk it faces, including changes to the legal and regulatory landscape? Accessibility. How has the company communicated its policies and procedures to all employees and relevant third parties? Has the policies and procedures been published in a searchable format for easy reference? And does the company track access to various policies and procedures to understand what policies are attracting more attention from relevant employees? Responsibility for operational integration. Who has the responsibility for integrating policies and procedures? And have they been rolled out in a way that ensures employees' understanding of the policies?
Can I?
Oh, your next word, gatekeepers, but go ahead.
That is my question, because I just don't understand, in my experience, why compliance is absent when it comes to the formulation of policy. Because what I find lacking across the board in most places where I work has been effective policy and procedure. Like there is none. And that's exactly why it's chaos. And I'm like, who is like I just don't
compliance
understand.
is not responsible for every department's policies and procedures. They can help with crafting and writing, but that department knows what it does. That department knows its work. Compliance doesn't know every department's work. So we're not responsible for the policies and procedures of every department. We need to make sure that they have some. And again, we can help write them, but it's not our responsibility to write them. Now, overall, we should be at the table in having the discussion on how these policies and procedures globally across an organization will be disseminated. Yeah, but we're not the owners of that. So we can be at the table and assist and help, but we're not the owners. Our job is to make sure that they exist.
But that still go well. You answer my question, because like there is no table for people. There's no discussion of policies, and it's like it's almost it's. I have not worked anywhere where I have known who is directly involved with a policy and procedure for any department. And that's the problem, because it is, and that's why it's a free for all out in these streets, because I get that compliance is not responsible for every department, but I've only worked in a handful of places and could have 4 fingers left over of places that had effective policy. like consistent, effective policy. And like you mentioned, like in a searchable form, like what, that's like Greek. What? Mm-mm.
Well, I worked in an organization that I remember we had a whole policy overhaul. At one point, there was a system. I can't think of the system off the top of my head. That they actually paid money to, and they used their I want to say IT resources to assist in getting all these policies in one searchable database, if you will, which was a massive and very, very costly effort. But everybody, to your point, people were saying, like, we don't know the policies about this, or we don't know the policies about that. And then we learned as we were doing that, like even in independent or individual departments, folks didn't know what their policies were. And it's like, well, that's a leadership problem, because the managers and directors and VPs of specific departments, they should make sure that the people are equipped with the policies and procedures of that specific department. Not only at onboarding, because that's usually where it first happens, but periodically. So during department meetings, if it has been decided or discussed that, hey, we've uncovered, or there's a change in regulation, or we've noticed that XYZ is happening or not happening, and we need to make a shift in the policy, there needs to be discussion at those meetings. I know folks like to meet just to see each other and high five and hey now and what you did last weekend or whatever, but the meetings have to have a little more meat on them, to discuss things like any policy changes, or making sure that people are aware of what those policies are and how to get their hands on the policy if they need to. It's a useless policy if one, no one knows about it, and two, no one knows how to get to it. What's the whole point? Crafty Coder also says, unfortunately, until the government puts their foot down and enforces the fact that there should be, I think there shouldn't be a compliance program. Well, they do in a way with the CIAs, the corporate integrity agreements. If you are found, oftentimes if you are found guilty, or if there's some issues and repayments, and depending on the egregiousness of the concern or issue, your organization is placed on a corporate integrity agreement. And that's not pretty. I've known several organizations that actually had that. And you think compliance is hard? No, it's a regular cadence that they have to report all of this, the effectiveness of their program. I want to say every 30 days to the government. And the CIAs can last anywhere from, I think, 2 to 5 years. So imagine that every 30 days for 2 to 5 years, the government is right there. Well, let me see this. Make sure you put this in. It's a whole different, the whole culture changes at that point, where it should have been, again, proactive and had those changes going forward versus now being reactive and enforced. But any organization, in my experience, that have gone through a CIA has a well-rounded, well-oiled compliance program machine, because they know what it means to do.
But that's because, and it's just like the Crafty Coder said, she said, right, but that's after. She's talking about before the CIA. And I really do. I'm telling you, like, compliance is like the tooth fairy. Like, we know it's out there, but nobody's ever seen it.
So do you ask the questions? So are you asking, who is our compliance officer? How can I get into? So if we're providing the knowledge, you need to have a compliance program. There should be a compliance officer. Sometimes, again, as I mentioned, it's a two-way conversation. who is the compliance person? Now, of course, they may give you the big eye thinking that you're about to tell something and whistle blow. But you have a right to know who that person is. You have a right to know. And hey, can they come to the meeting? Can they, I have some additional questions, or, can we put them on the agenda or whatever? Maybe we all need to know who the compliance person is and what the compliance policies are directed to our department. Or maybe they can help us understand, what we need to have and what we need to do. Or how is compliance being monitored in our department? I mean, these are some questions that you as an employee involved in, and not just you specifically, but you, all y'all out there in the world, can ask related to the department and the work that you're doing.
You can ask, but it's you just get the runaround, because the bottom line is, this is just such the rabbit hole, but it is also key to why healthcare is the way it is, because there is very little accountability and very little compliance going on the front end. I mean, of course, once somebody gets their hand smacked by the government, they all fall in line because they want and need the money. But I'm talking about before. I'm telling you, I've only seen it done the right way once, and I've been in HIM now for almost a decade, and that's really sad. But it is also I understand exactly why healthcare, HIM, is in the state that it's in. And it's sad.
Yeah, she said, sounds good, Clarice, but not what's really happening. Ask about compliance and see how they look. Well, your job, because you're liable. You as an employee is liable as well if something comes down related to something that your fingers have touched. So you need to know the people involved and what those policies are. You need to know, regardless of what that tone is from the top, whether they look at you cross-eyed, sideways, upside down. You have a right and a responsibility to know your organization, in my opinion. I'm asking questions. I want to know. Well, let me see what, or I believe every department or every organization has an org chart. Follow that org chart up through your CEO, because typically your compliance department, somebody in compliance, your chief compliance officer reports up through your CEO. In some crazy setups, which they shouldn't do, but some of them may still report to the CFO. That's a whole other conversation. Or they may have a dotted line to a CFO. And your board, if you are a nonprofit. I got LaShonta's compliance, or a nonprofit. There's a board, but you can always kind of check to see who reports to whom, and that way that gives you at least the chief compliance person, and then you can kind of dig for the staff and see, maybe there's somebody who is over, because sometimes they're broken down or depending on how the department is set up. Some departments are set up where they're broken up by operational areas, or they can be broken up if you have a large organization. They can be broken up by the region, or if you have multiple entities in several states and locations across the country, then they may have responsibility for a region or a facility. So again, you can get that information too. Like, well, who is my compliance contact? Because you may not necessarily have to go to the chief, but you should have a hotline, and you can call the hotline and ask any question you need. That's what the hotline is for, and that hotline should be monitored. So even if you don't want to necessarily go through your manager or director or VP or whomever, you can call the hotline. That's what every place should have a hotline. Don't be giving me those big eyes. All right. So, Put in gatekeepers, your favorite word. What if any guidance and training has been provided to key gatekeepers in the control processes? Those with approval authority or certification responsibilities. Do they know what misconduct to look for? Do they know when and how to escalate concerns? Again, you got training and communications. Is appropriately tailored training. So again, if all of these things that you're seeing, then these organizations, no wonder they got billions of dollars of fines coming back, because none of this applies to them because they haven't been doing it. But the government is giving you the guidance. The government is giving you the blueprint on what an effective compliance program is supposed to look like.
The government gives the blueprint on everything, but nobody follows it.
Well, that's the choice that folks take, right? And so that's the risks that they decide that they're willing to take. Yep. Again, they want to make sure that it's employed by or understood by their employees in practice in order to decide whether the compliance program is truly effective. Again, if it's risk-based training, the form, content, and effectiveness of the training, communications about misconduct, and availability of guidance. What resources have been available to employees to provide guidance related to compliance policies? We just talked about that. How has the company assessed whether its employees know when to seek advice and whether they would be willing to do so? The confidential reporting structure and investigation process. There should be some sort of hotline or some sort of mechanism. Effectiveness of the reporting mechanism. Does the company have an anonymous reporting mechanism? And if not, why not? Has the reporting mechanism been publicized to the company's employees and other third parties? I've seen, and I believe a lot of organizations, if you go to their websites, there's always a link to your compliance hotline or compliance people or compliance information. That's one place you can always start if you don't know. Does the company take measures to test whether employees are aware of the hotline and feel comfortable using it? How has the company assessed the seriousness of the allegations it received? And has the compliance function had full access to reporting and investigative information? Properly scoped investigation by qualified personnel, investigation response, resources, and tracking of results. Then you have third-party management. They should apply risk-based due diligence to its third-party relationships. They are asking, again, risk-based and integrated processes, appropriate controls, management of relationships, real actions and consequences. When there are mergers and acquisitions, there should be a due diligence process. So say your organization is looking at another organization and want to acquire it. There should be a whole due diligence process associated with that before they decide to say, yeah, we're going to get you. Integration in the mergers and acquisition process connecting due diligence to implementation. Is the corporate compliance program adequately resourced and empowered to function effectively? And so this may be another piece where they don't have enough staff, they don't have enough resources. It may just be one person out there in the world. I don't know. It says prosecutors are instructed to probe specifically whether a compliance program is, quote, a paper program or one implemented, resourced, reviewed, and revised as appropriate in an effective manner. There should be a commitment by senior and middle management. Beyond compliance structures, policies, and procedures, is important for a company to create and foster a culture of ethics and compliance with the law at all levels of the company. Again, compliance doesn't just reside in that department. It's the organization's responsibility. The effectiveness of a compliance program requires a high-level commitment by company leadership to implement a culture of compliance from the middle and the top. The top leaders, the board of directors and executives, should set the tone for the rest of the company. So they'll be looking at the conduct at the top with some of these questions that they would ask related to that. A shared commitment. to compliance and oversight. Oh, you moving. I was like, it's trying to get you. Autonomy and resources. They should evaluate the structure. Where within the company is the compliance function housed? Is it within the legal department, under a business function, or as an independent function reporting to the CEO and or board, which is the ideal structure? To whom does the compliance function report? Is the compliance function run by a designated chief compliance officer or another executive within the company? And does that person have other roles within the company? Are compliance personnel dedicated to compliance responsibility, or do they have other non-compliance responsibilities within the company? Why has the company chosen the compliance structure it has in place? And what are the reasons for the structural choices the company has made? Seniority and stature. How does the compliance function compare with other strategic functions in the company in terms of stature, compensation levels, rank, title, reporting line, resources, and access to key decision makers? What has been the turnover rate for compliance and relevant control function personnel? What role has compliance played in the company's strategic and operational decisions? How has the company responded to the specific instances where compliance raised concerns? And have there been transactions or deals that were stopped, modified, or further scrutinized as a result of compliance concerns? Your experience and qualification of your compliance personnel, funding and resources. Again, has there been sufficient staffing for compliance personnel to effectively audit, document, analyze, and act on the results of the compliance efforts? Has the company allocated sufficient funds for the same? Have there been times when requests for resources by compliance and control functions have been denied? And if so, on what grounds? Also, data resources and access and autonomy. Outsource compliance functions. This is another part that they would look for. Compensation structures and consequence management. So they want to deeper dive into what does that look like? What is the human resources process as it relates to disciplinary decisions, including the type of misconduct at issue? Your disciplinary measures, consistent application. Is it consistent? Has it been fairly and consistently applied across the organization, your disciplinary actions and incentives? Financial incentive systems and the effectiveness of such. And does the corporation's compliance program work in practice? So then they want to measure and monitor that. The continuous improvement, periodic testing and review. Internal audit. There should be some internal audit going on. Control testing and evolving updates, as well as the culture of compliance. Investigation of misconduct. What does that look like? Properly scoped investigation by qualified personnel, response to investigations, independence and empowerment. Communication channels, policy environment, which we talked about a lot. Risk management, analysis and remediation of any underlying misconduct. Again, what's the root cause analysis of any misconduct issue, prior weaknesses, payment systems, vendor management, prior indications, remediations, accountability, so on and so forth. And then this is the resources or references from this document. All right.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So compliance does a lot. We're responsible for a lot. Let's see, what'd she say? And guessing if there's no hotline, there's no compliance plan in place. Lord, I don't know. I don't know. I'm nervous. So again, from those small little mom and pop organizations, and the OIG has given guidance. They have given specific guidance for hospitals, physicians. I think there's a long-term care one. And I believe I read somewhere this year that they are in the process, because they're sort of dated, but they're in the process of revamping them. So the OIG has always provided guidance on what a compliance plan should entail. That's where we got those 8 elements, but then they give specifics on, exactly what it should look like. And then this document gives you even more specifics on what it is that you should do and how you should move for an effective compliance program. So, yeah. Really, sir?
We
I'm
gonna
just saying.
we gonna see.
This is what it's supposed to look like. This is what's supposed to happen. When these folks don't have it or they don't do it.
I have been saying it since I, got into HIM. Like, people want to act like the government is the big bad wolf in healthcare, but the government really does lay it out how you're supposed to do everything.
They give it to you. They tell
really
you what to do.
All you have to do is just
3.
Exactly. All you got to do is just follow.
You just got to do it. I don't understand. Let's see. Shay says the policies are there, but as an employee, we are not aware of them until something goes wrong. It's showed to us after the incident has taken place. And that's a problem. That is really a problem. That there should be some consistent review of the policy. When I'm providing any type of education or training or usually whatever, I try to do a quick assessment of the room. I don't assume that everybody knows where the most basic step 1 is. I'm going to ask, hey, who all in here knows where our policies are? Who all in here knows what a policy is? Let's start there. I mean, we can get as granular as needed. And from that helps me understand, what I really need to focus on during this conversation or during this presentation, because you can be way off up in Oz land and then miss a whole group of folks because they clueless as to what it is that you were even talking about. So sometimes, you got to break it down. You got to break stuff down for folks for them to really understand and show them, hey, let's open up the systems. Let's walk through. Where are the policies? Show folks where they can go in and get the policies. Because oftentimes there may be questions about something that's being done in a particular department, and the answer could lie in a policy, or the answer to potentially making appropriate revisions or amendments to a policy can be right there based on just having a discussion. Well, the policy says this, but the guidance says so and so and so. So this is why we got a problem. If we take a look at what our policy and procedure is versus what the guidance is, they don't match. So, that can be the start of all kinds of conversations and hopefully changing of processes and workflows in those kind of situations. But those gotta open their mouth and talk or speak or find out, or I don't know. It's disheartening to hear that there are so many in y'all experiences, the organizations that don't. I would like to know, if you were in an organization, do you know your compliance person? Put that in the chat. Do you know who your compliance person is? Do you know where you can locate policies if need be? Is there a hotline that you can call? Is there a website? And is that compliance information listed on the website? All of those things are things that should occur in your organization, big or small. If your 2-man shop got a website, there should be some information about, how you handle compliance somewhere. And there should be, even if you don't do it in-house or you outsource to somebody, then the information about how compliance is outsourced should be readily available to the public and your employees. First and foremost, your employees. They should know. I'm disheartened by this. This is sad.
It is.
Sad.
And that's exactly,
especially within the revenue cycle realm. Oh my God, you all, revenue cycle, we all part of revenue cycle. We right there up against the business. We in the business. We about the business. So we definitely should have a better understanding of how we need to move. Wow.
Because what it is like when you mention a website, yes, I've been places that have a website. Yes, there's a place that tells you the compliance toll-free number and you can, contact them anonymously. All that sounds nice, but at the end of the day, when you are doing your job and there is no established policy on how to do this, how to do that, that is a problem. So you can have all the toll-free numbers you want, but behind the curtain, it's still raggedy.
So in that scenario, if you are concerned about a policy regarding whatever process, do you take, because the toll-free number is for the public, but it's for you too. So you can call. And so say you don't know, but you need to know, or say you've asked and nobody is providing you what it is that you need. Then this is elevating it to another level, because at this point, when you make that call to the toll-free number, it's documented. Trust and believe, it's documented. And somebody is then responsible for the follow-up. So it then elevates it and puts another set of eyes on whatever your question and concern is. And then their responsibility is to respond back to you and find you either what it is that you're looking for, or the people who can help you put your hands on what it is that you're looking for. That's their task. As when you call that number, that then brings them into the fold. I'm just saying.
Okay.
That's what they're there for. They're there to help you get the information you need to do the job you're supposed to do.
I hear you.
I cannot with you. So you got to use your resources and use your tools. Just like you pick up that coding book to look up stuff. Use them resources and call that compliance person or office or whoever. Let them help you. And then get to be their best friend. You be like, I can circumvent all of this. So Mr. or Mrs. Compliance person, this, that, and the third, la, 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 la. Because ultimately, the compliance people want to remedy whatever internally. We want to make sure we tackle, and oftentimes we don't know what's going on in your departments until we hear from somebody, or, the government has sent a request for records about so and so and so, then everybody got the big eye. Versus, hey, this is going on. Again, I tell people all the time, if it doesn't look right, sound right, smell right, it probably isn't right. Let somebody know. We not in y'all business like that. Unless, again, there's a compliance committee and you have your leaders sitting at the table telling us, hey, this is a concern of mine. Can we take a look at this? Da, 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 da. So if you don't have that structure set up, then again, compliance really doesn't know what's going on in your world. And so it's up to those frontline people to say, hey, can somebody help me? Can somebody tell me whether or not this is right or wrong? Or we've been doing XYZ and I've never done this in any organization I have ever worked in. Is this right or wrong? And they could tell you. And then begin the investigation. Well, wait a minute. Why are we doing this? Blah, 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 blah. A good compliance department will then do some additional digging to figure out. And then that will be part of a risk assessment. That will be part of something that they potentially may monitor on a regular basis, or at a minimum, do a real quick audit to determine what is happening, what is going on. That's what compliance, they're the investigators. They're the ones that be digging. That's why I'm always looking for stuff. When we talk about stuff, I'll be like, whoa, let me go research that. Let me do that. That's what we do. That's how we try to help, again, people. But again, we don't know unless you tell us. And as you see, they don't want to give us money. They don't want to give compliance money because we're not a revenue generating operation. We should be considered a revenue, like you said, keeping operation. And that should be important. And the emphasis should be placed on that. But now, they're trying to throw all the money at the places that they think is going to give them the bigger bang for the buck. And then they don't like to hear when we tell them, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That's a no. They try to circumvent that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, that's the T on compliance. I feel like y'all just like, yes, but again, we all have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. She said, right, my job doesn't know that I got my compliance officer certification yet. Well, then let them know. Especially if you're interested in parlaying into compliance, talk to some folks, find out what's going on. Are they looking for compliance professionals? Are they looking for people? Or you can be that person because you're right there in the thick of what happens in the revenue cycle and have the knowledge and expertise for compliance. So you will be a perfect ally with somebody in the compliance department to help.
Well, I'll just share this. I mean, I think that this is very perfect worldy, but it's not a perfect world because you have a whole lot of people who because you can ask questions. You can say, well, this doesn't really jive with XYZ, or this is non-compliant. Then what happens is when you do that and you do it often enough, then you become the problem. And I've been down that road too. I have been in meetings and I've told people, well, this is not compliant, or you're really not allowed to do that. This is not how that works. You have to do this, you have to do that. Then all of a sudden, I'm not invited to meetings. And then it becomes, well, I didn't like his tone. Then you become the pariah because you tell people. So this is why a lot of people don't say anything, because people got bills to pay. And so you want to mess it up, then fine.
So then that's how you get it off of you, is you tell it to compliance and let them do the mouthpiece for you. So that way they're not looking at you as you're the bad person, you the person with the problem, you're whatever. You shift that to somebody else. Now you keep feeding
but it doesn't happen. It does. I'm telling you, it doesn't happen. And that's what happened to me. I did let somebody know, and they ended up the compliance person and the senior vice president.
Oh, compliance, the chief.
Did
you
yes.
call the hotline? Did you call the hotline?
I talked to
use that hotline. That hotline has to be traced. That hotline is your documentation. Like we talk about the documentation of the providers, use that hotline. Because they can say they talk to you, but you got a record. It's a written record. They transcribe use that hotline.
Well, long story short, I ended up, because I did document my conversations, I was able to get unemployment because then you become the problem and they try to force you out. It becomes too retaliatory, and that's why people don't do it.
And that's another thing that they look for, because if they do find out that there is some retaliation, again, that's compliance's job to determine.
Right, but
you're not supposed to retaliate against them because they brought something to your attention.
You're not supposed to, but you do. People have bills to pay, children to feed, and that's why people don't do it. This is exactly why, because all that it don't mean nothing, because it does not happen. Compliance is supposed to this, where you have your right, all that. Child, please, that's not how it works. It's not. It is a mess out here. You have no protection, none. None.
Unfortunate. Again, I'm so thankful and grateful for the opportunities that I've had with organizations that do protect, that do provide the assistance and the help, and kudos to them. Because it's not just Oz, it's not just pie in the sky. There are actual organizations that are doing this and doing this correct. And to you all's point, clearly there are organizations that are not. And that's an issue. That's a problem. So
because look, those places that are doing it right, I'd love to know who they are, because look, I need to work with them. because
and that could be part of your conversations when you are interviewing. Tell me a little bit about your compliance department. Tell me about what the knowledge of your compliance. That's a great interview question. When they ask you, well, do you have any questions for us? Mm-hmm. Let's talk compliance. What does the culture look like? Explain that part to me. And that could be from your perspective. Well, is this a place that I want to be bothered with because there are no policies, there's no this, there's no that, or hey, they got something together. They got some stuff going on.
But you know, in the interview, everybody dresses up that smelly old pig and put some lipstick on it. You don't find out until afterwards. But I like Crafty Coder's comment, because Crafty Coder, the bottom like that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm to the point where like this side of healthcare is beyond repair. I need to be on the government side so I can say, listen, y'all owe these people $10 million, because auditing is very black and white. There ain't no gray area. It is what it is. So that's where I need to be, because it's not gonna happen on this side, because they're not trying.
Well, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. But yeah, that's the T on compliance and what a compliance program should look like. So if you got questions, I suggest you reach out to your compliance people. Find out what's going on.
If you got questions,
to know the people.
Find another job.
Well, that too. But you still need to find out, even if you find another job, you still need to know. So find out, what does the culture of that organization looks like as it relates to compliance. Yep. All right. Well, that has been the tea for today. Yes.
Oh, the tea was definitely spilled, because you definitely have laid out what it's supposed to be, and I agree with what it's supposed to be. I mean, we just have to. I don't know what else the government can do other than if they just made every company hire 10 people or have government oversight actually in place. And maybe it might come to that, because people after their own devices, they just not going to do the right thing. That's just human nature, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But the government they lay it out. They lay everything out. Like, it's just no reason for it to be the chaos that it is, because the chaos is because people just don't follow the rules. That's it.
They don't. Or unfortunately, they don't keep up with them and know them. That's the other part of it.
But when you're in certain positions, you're supposed to know. Like, that's just like, there's no effective communication between departments. This is all, revenue cycle is a team effort. It really, really is. And you have to be in collaboration. Somebody at each stage of the cycle should be in touch with with leadership in the other part of the cycle, and it should be smooth, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm. It should be. Shay says she does know the compliance officer, and I do know how to contact them. Or she does know the compliance office, and I do know how to contact. Yay!
Good.
It's working for somebody. Oh, Lord. Yes. Well, they do have guidance. To the Crafty Coder point, they do have guidance for the OIG has guidance for small practices, physician offices related to compliance.
And sadly, they need compliance more.
They need it more
than the big operations, to be honest.
They need it more. So it again, those that I come in contact with, and they're starting, this, that, and the third, it's like, let's have a conversation about compliance. Let's talk about how it's one thing to get into it. It's something else totally to run it, operate it, and do it within that compliance lens. And yeah, because stuff changes, and what you are doing today may be something totally different tomorrow. And you're responsible to make sure that you know what those changes are and you're following suit. So yeah, that's why a lot of folks is out here running them up.
And I know it's hard. I don't know what the medical school curriculum is. I don't know what the residency curriculum is, but I think that there needs to be more, because there seems to be healthcare seems to listen to, doctors, because when they're finished with their compassionate sacrifice, they really do do some work. But I think that they need to be engaged more, and they need to know what exactly, because doctors want to do the right thing. I don't think every doctor goes and says, well, I want to go be a doctor and I want to know how to defraud the government. I don't believe that.
Right. I don't think that's the case.
Right. And I just think that somewhere along the line, they just develop bad habits and they're being told incorrect information. I think that we need to get them, there's a lot that they need to learn coming out of medical school. So when they go into practice, that, they already have that kind of, compliance mindset, or at least know I need to find out from somebody in compliance, and not, somebody who's worked here for 72 years. Well, this is how we always done it. No, but what do the guidelines say?
Yeah, like we talked about last week. So if you missed episode 83, go check that out. We kind of outline what some of that looks like for a physician or a resident or a medical student coming out of residency and going into not necessarily private practice, but being employed. Some of the things that you need to know, some of the things that are helpful for you to know as it relates to compliance. Yep. All right, good people. We are at the top of the hour. You all have said that the tea has been spilled. Again, if this information was valuable for you, help us share this message. Help us share this message with others by sharing the video and subscribing to the channel. Y'all know I'm still on a mission of 10,000 subscribers. I think I said 20,000 somewhere. Can I get 5? Be sure to follow us for more information on all things health information, compliance, revenue cycle, and medical coding. And as you leave, don't forget to hit the thumbs up or like button. Also, check out the Coding Nurse channel on YouTube. So this has been a great session today, even though I'm a little disheartened, but I feel like providing this information, I'm providing a resource. I'm providing this information. So if you didn't know, here's some more things that you need to know. And hopefully this will cause you to act, to find out, to do some digging, to have some conversations within your department for your people.
We need about 10,000 more of you out here, Clarice. We really, really do. And I want to say congratulations to the Crafty Coder on getting your compliance certification.
Yes, congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, because we need you out here as well.
I'm telling you, rules and regulations and structure, because I'm telling you right now, this is like daycare, and there's some unruly children out here.
Oh, yes, they are. Woo. And there needs to be some corralling of them.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this has been a great session today. Thank you for joining. And remember, be safe, be kind, and don't wish for it, work for it. Until next time, take care. Have a good weekend.
I definitely got a meeting after the meeting for you.
Ooh, here we go. So y'all missing it. Y'all better get on our Patreon. Y'all missing it. All right. Bye.
Bye.